My name is Rachel Bray. I lead the Researcher Hub, and I'm delighted to welcome a group of wonderful colleagues from across the university who work in this space. Many of us have research as our backgrounds. I did a doctorate in the early 2000s and worked as a fixed-term researcher for about 20 years in various countries, including South Africa and this one. And I've really enjoyed working across the academic, policy and different spaces in my life, and making sure that research has impact in a way that boosts my career. And I've worked with many researchers, DPhil students. I know many of you on the call, postdocs and other fixed-term researchers when I was a careers advisor, and now in my capacity to lead the hub. So delighted to introduce you to Chris, who's in the background. Thank you, Chris, sharing our slides as careers advisor for researchers. We have Miriam, Emma, Jaci and Michaela. And we're going to hear from everybody during the presentation. So we're here to think about how we can work towards research impact in a way that we gain experience that employers will want, whether those employers are in academia, in roles alongside academia, or particularly in roles and sectors beyond academia. So here's a rough outline of what we're going to cover. You can see here, please put your questions in the chat line. Our colleagues on the call will be looking at those, and you can thumbs up those questions that you really like that other people have asked, and we can make sure we prioritise those. We're going to hear the lightning talks from our colleagues about particular opportunities here in the Oxford environment that you can get stuck into right now during your DPhil studies and or your fixed-term research role. Then we'll open to questions and think about some resources for your next steps. Thank you, Chris. Impact. Okay, so a big word, covers many, many things. We are not being prescriptive here about the type of impact and the area of impact that we're thinking about. We're thinking about making research count. And you can see from these images, which I really liked, I found them on the University of Western Australia website because they capture the many and diverse areas that our research can make a difference. So you come from all sorts of different disciplines. Your work will possibly be very local, possibly be national or regional in its focus, or indeed global. And impact can happen in all areas. And impact doesn't need to be starting up a new enterprise or a company or an initiative. It can be sustaining, it can be questioning, it can be sharing evidence, ideas. So this is a really broad area. And if you're wondering about where and how your research might have impact, I'd really encourage you to look at some case studies on the university website, and you can see the link there. Thanks, Chris. What's the link between having research and our career development? So the images I've put up here, these might provoke your thinking. What do you think might be the answers to these questions? This question has a lot of answers. Pop some suggestions into the Q&A, and then we can have a look at what your thoughts are there. You can see some ripples in the pond. You can see some images around looking further beyond the telescope, thinking about where the wonderful ideas and concepts and discoveries that you've been making in your research, how they might make a difference. Okay, have we got any suggestions in the Q&A? I'm going to wait for a few more moments. If anyone can see them and I can't, then do shout them out. Okay, so I can see that somebody has written here, okay, ripples in the pond. So when we throw a stone into the pond, we get many, many ripples, some of which we might predict, some of which we cannot predict. And the image on the left is conveying that. We want to put something out there, whether it's through publication, through a public speaking engagement, through talking to school children, and see where it takes us. What we can do with our research will be, we're one person, but when we work with others, we share our findings, we share our concepts, that's when it can make a difference. Visibility of research, that's a great suggestion. The academic environment is rather constrained, can be rather constrained in the sense of an onus on publications, which are academic publications, which are read by experts and others in our field. But let's face it, that can be quite limited. There's a lot more that can be done and a lot more avenues that we could pursue. And this is where interaction with people who might be interested in using the research can really gain traction. And we can learn how our research is received and the skills and competencies that might be able to be developed. I popped the Creative Destruction Lab down there just to mention that there's all sorts of ways in which ideas get challenged, ideas in the wider world, ideas in academia, and often the most exciting innovation and new ways of thinking happens at the interface of those sectors. Thanks, Chris, we can continue. What then do employers look for? Many things, and core employability skills, as mentioned at the bottom of this slide, tend to include what are often referred to as soft skills. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer because they're core, and these would include things like communication, teamwork, management and planning, organizational skills, leadership, initiative. And just above those, so I would suggest follow the link at the bottom of the slide here, and perhaps our colleagues can pop it in the Q&A. That'll give the Careers Service overview of those core skills. James Cunningham's research, which is quoted at the beginning of this slide, is really interesting because he did work around what counts in middle and senior level academic appointments. And often there's the perception that progression in academia is only about how much you've published or how much money you've raised in your research grants. Now, those two things do count. At the same time, when it comes to very equivalent publication rates and grant income, the items here in bullet points are the ones that count most when actually appointment panels are making a decision between really good candidates. Now, interestingly, many of those intersect very neatly with core employability skills. So it's actually about how you are in the research environment, how strategic you are, how clear you are about the role of research. And so what I wanted to do is share this because what you're doing now here at Oxford, you are building these skills. And these skills can take you further in academia, and these skills can take you further beyond academia. So the lightning talks you're about to hear, bear these in mind, these skills in mind, as you listen to our colleagues, because I think you'll see and hear a lot of resonance. Okay, so how can we go about building the skills? Well, it's all about engagement. There's a lot of possibility here. We're obviously in a very large, rich, diverse academic environment with a lot of interfaces within the academic context and beyond. And you'll hear more about those. So I'm just going to mention a few things here that to start you thinking, because there's lots of opportunities to do voluntary things and also the knowledge exchange and projects and fellowships that come through the Impact Acceleration Award. So internal funding that is sometimes a little hidden. You need to have a look in your divisional research teams space. So go to the each of the divisions has a website, and researcher support will be one of the tabs, and see what's on offer in terms of internal funding. And I know from personal experience and working with many researchers across the university that bridge funding or opportunities to work up a research design happens through these knowledge exchange projects and fellowships. Innovation fellowships are part of maths, physics and life sciences. And then research careers, I've just popped up there, that's a great resource to understand how people in the PhD period and postdoc period have taken up opportunities within their research environment to engage across different spaces. And that's been a really critical catalyst to help them prepare for a role in a different sector. You have many skills, both technical because of the subject matter you look into and the methodological expertise you have, and also conceptual. You're all great thinkers. That's what is valuable about a research background and what you can trade on, essentially. At the same time, it's really helpful for people beyond academia to be able to understand what your skills are. So the more you embed in an environment that is a little different to academia, the more one can learn. So internships, secondments, they are really good opportunities for that kind of interaction. Internships available to students, and the Career Service website has a specific area for those. The kind of research collaborations you might initiate, that's worth bearing in mind. What are the value add of thinking about partners who are beyond academia or at the interface between academia and policy or academia and commercial activity? How might thinking about the users of your research both extend the value of your research and build the skills that you might take into your next career step? Okay. Consultancy and public engagement, we're going to hear a little bit about later, and policy too. Thanks, Chris. And there's also the opportunities I mentioned earlier. So what are the barriers that tend to hold us up? Here are a list in no particular priority, but they're the sorts of things that I've encountered in my research career or I encounter through the Careers Service. And these are often fears or perceptions. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to bust a few of these myths, but let's see what pops up here and whether you recognise any of these. There can be questions around a sense of legitimacy or permission. Am I able to go and do these things alongside my DPhil or while I'm in a postdoc contract? How much support will I get from my immediate colleagues? And how do I go about choosing? There may be other questions. Time is a real precious commodity for everyone, and a niggling doubt. Is it going to be worth it? What am I going to get out of it? So if you recognise yourself in some of those, we understand that, and the talks you're about to hear and the services we provide, we hope to be able to support you in those. Okay, we're going to move now into some lightning talks, and here are the areas that we're going to cover. And we have some fabulous speakers, and Miriam, lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us. We're going to start with Jaci, and then we can also hear from our next colleagues too. We have Miriam, we have Michaela, Emma, and then I'm going to say a little bit about policy engagement opportunities. So let's hand over to you, Jaci, to take us through the consulting opportunities here. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Great. Yes, I'm just going to go very briefly through consultancy and how you can get involved in consultancy, because consultancy is one way that you can make an impact from your research. And we do find that consultancy projects often lead to longer term impact collaborations. Sometimes from consultancies, you can even write research publications, on and so forth. So there's quite a lot that can be done from consultancy. I'm at Oxford University Innovation, and I'm head of the consulting services team. And at the end of the talk, we'll talk about a little bit about how we can help you. But just very briefly, consultancy, the primary purpose is to advise and assist clients. So it's not it's usually where it's not available within the client's staff. Now, quite often we battle because we can't understand why we can't get over a challenge with a client, and usually that's because the client is actually using consultancy as design and develop, for example, rather than advising on design and development. So it's quite different to doing rather than advising on in many cases. Obviously you do as well, but a lot of it's around advising and using your expertise to give advice, to provide guidance to the staff of a client. It's usually short term, not always. Usually we do have some long projects, but typically it's a few months if it's a defined piece of work. You should be remunerated on a commercial basis. Now, commercial basis, we can talk about that. It depends on the sector and the client and a whole bunch of things, but it should be commercial basis. It's not intended to develop new IP, and usually it belongs to the client. And I'm saying usually because sometimes there are exceptions, but usually new IP, and that's usually not an invention. It's something like the copyright in a publication or a document belongs to the client. It is not research. And on the right-hand side, I've said what it isn't, where the primary purpose is generation of new knowledge. That would be research and would obviously go through research services. And, we look at the Frascati definition of research, where research is all of those things. Consultancy can be some of those things. Consultancy could be creative and uncertain, but it's generally not going to be all 5 of those things. Next slide, please. So why would you do it? It's not research, you're researchers. Well, there's a number of reasons. Intellectually stimulating. A lot of the academics who work with us find consultancy very intellectually stimulating. It provides them insights and experience that then they can apply to their research and teaching. It helps wider society. It makes an impact. It can develop relationships leading to research. It can provide evidence to government which demonstrates research impact. And there were some consultancy examples in the last REF case studies in REF 2021. So certainly it's not, obviously it wouldn't be, it would be research that's led to consultancy and other forms of impact. It can broaden your career horizons, and actually it can be financially rewarding. I always put that last because that's not the main reason to do it, but it obviously is a reason why a lot of people do it. Next slide, please. So what types of consulting could you do? Well, it's how long is a piece of string, but essentially product strategy analysis, summary report writing, feasibility studies, technology assessments. So, for example, we have investors who say, they've had a company that's come to them with, for investment, and it's got lots of new technology, and it's not really in their comfort zone. So they will go to, a key quantum researcher and say, can you look at this technology and is it feasible, for example? So, they will assess technology. Bespoke problem solving, advisory boards and roundtable discussions. We do have quite a lot of that, particularly in pharmaceutical and medical, but in other areas as well. People join advisory boards. Software installation, implementation, quite often alongside a sort of an open source software. A client can't just use the open source software because they don't have the expertise. So then we would have researchers who consult to the client. Mentoring and training, we wouldn't do open courses, but certainly if it's bespoke training to a group within a client, speaker agreements, and we do expert witness as well. It is quite a niche area where academics actually provide expert witnesses in court cases. So and there's more. It's not just that, but those are just some examples of the types of consulting you can do. Next slide, please. So how would you go about finding consulting opportunities? And unfortunately, people come to us and they say, well, can you find me them? It's really difficult because if a client needs some advice or expertise, or they will go to the university's website and search for somebody who can help them. But you can also make sure you're out there and finding those things. So at conferences, networking, other events, are you speaking to clients, to potential clients, and saying, yeah, I could advise on that. Speak to your colleagues, your supervisors, so on and so forth. Introduce yourself, make connections, all about networking. And you could identify industry partners that may not understand what expertise you could provide, and you could reach out to them to say, I can help you in this area. I see you might be struggling or whatever. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do, as well as, next slide, please, developing consulting opportunities. So I think the one thing we always say is make it clear that you're available. So if I look at academic profiles on the university's website, it's sort of, you'll list only your research publications, which is great, but make it clear that you are open to consulting opportunities or you have done consulting. Updated and clear social media. LinkedIn is a big one. You know, make it clear on your LinkedIn profile that you are available for consulting opportunities. Academic publications, you can also make it clear that you're available. And I think the last point is be mindful when something is a consultancy, not just a conversation. So quite often, I experienced consultants know this, so they will give somebody a little bit of their time, but then they'll say, no, after this, it's consultancy. But I think particularly in the early days, you want to go and help people, and you know, it's interesting, and you're discussing it with people, with the potential, with industry partners, and then they're picking your brain. And I think you just need to be aware of when that turns over. And then you could always just say, look, I think we need a longer discussion on this. It would be then through a consultancy. And that's absolutely fine to say that to a client. So that's really it. I think the next slide is where we're going to be stopping.
Thanks, Jaci. That's really, really helpful. I wonder if you could just give us a quick overview of how one can get into freelance consulting through the Oxford environment.
Well, I think that the one thing is a lot of people are particularly nervous about starting it. Like, what do I do? And what about the contract? And we quite often get researchers coming to us and saying, I've been approached by a client. And as I said, it's really difficult for us to find opportunities because people don't come to us. And when they do, then we struggle to find the right the client. So usually it's going to come to themselves. Or they've met somebody at a networking event and then they're like, oh, this person sent me a contract. So that's where we can step in. So essentially we can assist you by, you know, making sure the contract protects you, protects the university. We limit liability, and sometimes these contracts we see from clients, often it's just they've got a standard contract and it's not really appropriate, but nobody's questioned it before. And we say that we wouldn't sign that. You know, you basically could be sued, and there's no limitation of liability. We take all of that away from you. You should have insurance if you do consultancy. If you do it privately, have insurance. But if you do it through us, we can provide that insurance. It's underwritten by the university's insurance office. We can negotiate. Now, one of the things that we do is negotiate the fee. And we can advise on typical fees and take the awkwardness out. A lot of researchers are quite awkward about, like, well, I want X. We don't set the fee. We will be advised, like, what is your walkaway position? But we can certainly say, that sounds a bit low. Why don't we try going at this? And then we can always go down from that. But we can take that awkwardness out of that conversation with the client. We provide support. We facilitate the OA1 forms. Now, for those of you who've never done this before, the outside approval form, it is a bit of a nightmare. It is a form that you have to fill in for any outside approval, and that is whether you go through us or not. If you don't go through us, you still have to do it. If you go through us, we facilitate it, and you can do up to 30 days of consulting or any outside work per year. We also query doing contract delivery. I mean, we had an academic recently was literally on her way to consulting. It was bespoke training, and there was a major problem. Suddenly it was 30 people and not 10 people that she thought. So we sorted all that out. Business development. So if you say, well, I've got this consulting job, but I actually need statistical support, for example, with this job, we can then get hold of the right people within the university. And then we manage all the payment for you. We invoice, we chase the debt, and we distribute fees to you. Oh, so sorry, couple of questions. Access consulting support as a postdoc? Absolutely. Postdoc, we do a lot of work with postdocs. We actually can provide support for anybody in the university, whether they're professional staff, whether they're researchers, postdocs, even students. Obviously, students, there could be visa issues. That's the one thing. And the second thing is the university doesn't encourage students necessarily to do consulting, because obviously their primary job is to be here and get a degree. But certainly we with the permission of the supervisor, can help anybody at the university. And then what subjects I could offer consulting for? Well, I think maybe contact us and we can have a discussion on the sort of potential, because we've done so many consulting projects over the years. We've got a good sense of, for this sort of client, you could do that. And I mean, one of the examples I give is we've got an academic who does circadian rhythm research, essentially, and the effect of light. And this is on our website, so it's all out in the public domain. And he came to me and he said, there's a lot of, he wants to do more consulting work, and there's a lot of lighting companies who throw these blue lights in and say, oh, blue light, it's going to help you with your body clock. And he says it's not. So what we did was we created an article where he's actually saying, I can assist you, lighting company, with the biological mechanisms that underpin what you're doing, so that actually what you're doing is effective. So it's not like obviously in his area, but it's going into a different sector and saying, what can you do? So have it, just contact us and have a discussion with us about that, and we can help you.
Thank you, Jaci. That's really, really helpful. And others, great questions from you participants. That's lovely. If others of you have more questions, save them up. We'll be doing a Q&A at the end. And now I'd like to invite Miriam. Miriam, very warm welcome. You are head of the community volunteering at the Oxford Hub. Tell us what you have to suggest.
Hello, thanks very much for the introduction, Rachel, and lovely to be here. Can I ask with slides, do you have them? Oh, you do, amazing, brilliant, thanks so much. So yeah, my name's Miriam and I work for the Oxford Hub. Oxford Hub is a community-based charity that works across Oxford, particularly in OX4, South East Oxford, to build a better Oxford, basically, make Oxford a better place. And we do so by tackling inequality in the city. So we look at inequalities of health, we look at inequalities of education, and we look at inequalities of opportunity. And we have lots of student volunteers and staff at the university who volunteer with us, people across the whole spectrum of the Oxford community volunteering with us. And what we generally hear from university members who volunteer is that it's a really good place for them to get a slightly different perspective on Oxford and to get experience that otherwise they wouldn't have got elsewhere. So this is a picture of Oxford from the latest census, and if you are mostly within the university, this may be a side of Oxford which is a little bit more unfamiliar to you. So while we sort of have all of the dreaming spires and a lot of affluence in the city, it's also, as many people know, an incredibly unequal city. 9 of our neighbourhoods are in the 20% most deprived in the UK, and one way that this plays out is in life expectancy gaps. So a man living in North Oxford is likely to live for 13 years longer than a man living in North Fieldsbrook, which is in the southeast of the city. You also have lots of children experiencing poverty and then not having the same opportunities as their wealthier peers, not meeting the national standards in reading, writing and maths. And as you might expect in such an international city, we've got huge numbers of people learning English as an additional language. And those are university members, those are people who have come to Oxford for work, some of those are also asylum seekers. And we work with all of those groups. Could I please have the next slide? Thank you. So about us, going beyond those statistics, which are really quite dry, we have very many kind of joyful, active, proactive communities who we work within across the city, help to resource and help people participate and feel a sense of belonging in Oxford as a whole. And so from a sort of volunteer perspective, we often hear from people who volunteer in our projects that it changes their sense of belonging to the city, shows them a side of the city which they can feel a sense of belonging in, and yeah, by being able to participate and being able to have a strong sense of agency in the city, getting that sense of belonging. All of this work that we do is informed by principles such as doing with instead of doing for. We don't want to do things for people in the city, we want to do things together. We want to support people to do things that they want, and we can help to resource that. We believe that we learn from each other by working collaboratively, and this is a very important principle for researchers as well, particularly researchers working within communities. You can always learn from the people around you. Can I have the next slide, please? Why would we volunteer with Oxford Hub, and how can we volunteer with Oxford Hub? So there are lots of different ways to get involved, and these are just some of our projects where you can volunteer. If you are interested in working with people learning English as an additional language, for example, if your research is to do with migration, you might want to take part in Fellow. So Fellow is our free English language support, which you can participate in for 1 hour a week, or even less. You can sign up for ad hoc classes that happen Mondays and Thursdays for 1.5 hours each. And a lot of this work is with people whose asylum claims are currently processing and they're living in Oxford at that time. If you are interested in working with young people, or if your research has anything to do with child development, we have a mentoring programme and a tutoring programme. Our tutoring programme, Skills Plus, is 1 hour a week, and that you will be matched one-to-one with a local young person, and through tutoring, kind of get to know them and help them improve their educational attainment. If you are up for something a bit more long term, if you know you're going to be in Oxford for a long time, over a year or more, you can get involved in Big Brothers Big Sisters, which creates mentoring relationships. So again, a one-to-one match, but this time to do things like this picture here of somebody climbing, to go out and do fun things and be a positive influence in that young person's life. And if you have your own idea and are generally kind of interested in Oxford community and making Oxford a better place, we also have the Community Enterprise Awards, where you can put in funding applications to get money for your own project while you're here. So those are some of the kind of key things that you can do at Oxford Hub. And I would encourage you to think about ways that if you are studying something that is to do with community or to do with social policy, think about ways you can get that experience on the ground. Volunteering at somewhere like Oxford Hub is a really good way to do so, to see things from a different perspective, and to understand the sort of real kind of interpersonal, day-to-day individual experiences that people are having locally in the city as well. If your research isn't anything about that, we still have lots of people who get involved who are from, for example, maths backgrounds, doing something completely different. And what we hear from them generally is it's a good opportunity to just do something different. So get out from behind the desk, see a different side of the city, get to know people they wouldn't have otherwise met, and maybe that will lead to an interest you don't yet know that you have. We have quite a high proportion of people who are involved in Oxford Hub as students, who then go on to actually kind of change their career path as a result because of an interest that they've developed through their volunteering. So I would encourage you to come along and just see what interests you develop out of that. If you're interested in getting involved, you can get involved all year round. We're not, like predominantly for students or anything like that. Anyone can join at any point in the year. And the commitment levels kind of vary depending on the role. So for Schools Plus and Fellow one-to-ones, we ask for 3 months of commitment. But for the Fellow classes, you just do a little training session with us, and then you can drop in on the dates which work for you. So it varies. If you've just got, like a couple of weeks where you want to do something once a week, that's fine. You'd be very welcome at the classes. If you want to commit to something a little bit longer, then we would match you with somebody one-to-one. So that is a little bit about Oxford Hub and our programmes. It would be great to have you involved if you're interested, and I'm very happy to chat through any questions that people have. I'll drop our webpage in the chat as well, so you can have a look at all of our programmes in a little bit more depth. And
thank you, Miriam. That is superb. Thank you. That's a really, really useful overview. And I think what you're pointing out is really helpful, because volunteering builds all kinds of skills, team-based skills, communication skills. So regardless of our academic background, it's just really helpful to be able to diversify that skill set in the sense of what employers are looking for. So question for you, what kind of community enterprise projects have launched with you, and were there ever any university researchers involved in those?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Community Enterprise Awards are specifically from a funding pot that is for university staff and students to apply to. The projects need to have a benefit for the local Oxford community, but that's the main stipulation. We funded lots of different things. We funded new stuff starting up. We funded core costs of ongoing projects. We had one project recently where their rent went up, and we were able to sort of help them manage that change, because they went from having no premises to very cheap premises to suddenly normal costing premises. So we helped them balance that. And yeah, some examples of different projects that we have funded. So Common Ground Cafe had a startup grant from us. We were one of many contributors to getting Common Ground Cafe in Little Clarendon Street in Jericho going. We also funded a project called Shareworthy, which was a really lovely project about helping older people feel agency. A lot of the support for older people is around sort of just, well, going back to kind of doing for, making sure that the core needs are met. But dignity in old age is something which is often very much overlooked. Shareworthy were a project which got older people to tell their stories or teach a skill to an audience and put on events where the older person was kind of in charge of things and sharing their own expertise and experience.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's a great set of examples. Thank you. It's all very exciting, and we all wish we had 100 hours in every day to be able to do lots of this. But great that you've got such a diversity of offers. And I know it's obvious from your talk just now, and we all know what a friendly team you all are. So, and there's something for everybody, which is great. So thanks for opening the doors. Let's move on to hear our next lightning talk speaker. Michaela, over to you.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. Yeah. So yeah, I'm Michaela. I'm the MPLS division, the Maths, Physical and Life Science division's head of public and community engagement with research. So I thought I'd just start off by saying a little bit about why we should do public engagement research, but also what it is. What are we talking about? So as the slide suggests, public and community engagement research is all about connecting your research to society. So as the slide says, you know, the work that you're doing, it doesn't live in a void for the most part, even if it's the most esoteric thing that you think this is not relevant to anyone. There will be at least people out there who are interested, but certainly for areas for research, which is, you know, even distantly from possible application, but certainly closer to, or research that might be more sensitive or potentially controversial. You know, it's not even a nice to do, it becomes a necessary thing to connect your research with society. And that's not just about sharing your findings with the public, it can also be about listening to the public and working with them, all to make sure that what you're doing and the outputs from what you're doing are really relevant and impactful, that word impactful. So just to say, public here is referring to anyone who doesn't have an existing relationship with the university through research or teaching. So we're not talking about other researchers and we're not talking about students, while community in the way that we're referring to it is generally people based locally. So as Miriam was talking about their Oxford Hub work, but it could also be communities of interest, practice or identity. And, you know, in terms of the public, there's a line on Rachel's slide there, which maybe you're thinking about. The public don't care. They absolutely do. There is much empirical and other evidence in my own personal experience that they absolutely do care. Happy to talk about that more if there are questions. So the reasons for doing public engagement research are varied and many, and they'll be individual to you. It can be anything from simply responding to your funder's requirements. It could be about doing responsible research and innovation. It could be about trying to ensure that your research is transparent and accountable, developing increased agency for people, and just generally making sure that the benefits from research and the activities are equally shared amongst society. But, you know, it's also about developing your skills and having fun. So yeah, any public engagement research really should be about enhancing the quality and or the impact of your research, and definitely be mutually beneficial for those that you're engaging with. So it's not extractive. So it's definitely a very valid route to impact. Next slide, please, Chris. So yeah, there are lots of different ways of doing public engagement with research. This could be inspiring and informing through talks, media, exhibitions, things that you've likely seen lots of. It can be about collaborating with people, listening to what they have to say, deliberative panels. It could even be about getting people helping do the research itself, either through working with peer researchers to design, collect and analyze and interpret research, bringing that lived experience and their expertise, which is really valuable, through things like citizen science. And so what this slide is really just showing is that there's really something for everyone. If you prefer writing rather than talking to people face to face or presenting, then yeah, there's that. And if you prefer talking to very young children or not, then yeah, there is definitely something. If you like dancing, poetry, things like this, you have hobbies, you can build this into doing really meaningful, productive engagement. And yeah, by doing this sort of stuff, you're going to be developing really highly sought after skills, obviously communication skills, the interpersonal and influencing skills. Listening is obviously incredibly important. How you can creatively solve problems, and working with different people with different points of view and opening your mind, having an open mind. Obviously, time management, organizational and project management skills are all key to being able to make these kind of things happen. And these are really essential for your career development, be it inside or outside of academia. But like I say, also beneficial for your research. Can I have the next slide, please? So I just wanted to share a specific example of this, and you can read the full case study here by following that QR code. And this one's relatively old, but I really like it. So this is from Dr. William Hawthorne, who's a plant scientist in the biology department, and they were interested in understanding the bioquality of plants in the forests of Ghana and Liberia. Now, obviously, the people who are best placed about knowing what's going on in these forests are the people living in the local area. So they worked with those local people. And part of the process of trying to develop a rapid mapping and surveying method, they produced a local lexicon of the plants, which added into the mix the locals' perceptions of plants. So it wasn't even just what was there or the sort of biological benefit and so on, but also the cultural value, like what did these plants mean to the people. And so ultimately in doing this, he developed his maps and everything like this, and developing really important research questions in the area around conservation and so on. In turn, it also helped inform policies and later commercial operations, and helped balance that all around, bringing in the local needs and desires, and then was expanded beyond those countries through to Asia, Africa and the Americas. So yeah, it's just a really great example of how involving people can enhance the overall research and underpin policies and everything that developed afterwards. So next slide, please. So yeah, you might be wondering, okay, so how am I going to do this? And obviously it's all about finding a way for it to be relevant to your research. However, in the first instance, if you're very new to this and you just want to develop some skills and get a taste for things, then I would just recommend getting involved in something, anything that takes your fancy. Even just going along to something to watch it or shadow can really open your eyes to something. And there are loads and loads of opportunities throughout the university to do all manner of different forms of engagement. So, for example, if you are interested in working with young people, now obviously there are programs like Brilliant Club, we're going to hear from soon, which is absolutely amazing. But yeah, you can talk to your departmental and college access and outreach staff. They'll be doing stuff. You can jump in and get involved with that. You could be a guest on a podcast or make a video with Oxford Sparks, for example. There are others. If you're into writing, then the conversation is a great place to have a go. If you have a lot of data that you think the public could help you work with and analyze and classify, then, you know, it takes minutes to build an online citizen science project with the Zooniverse. And yeah, if you would like to figure out how your research can help benefit local communities, then we have a program called Science Together, which is all about starting with our local community opportunities and challenges, and helping to respond to that with your skills in research, working collaboratively. And yeah, if you are then keen to figure out how to develop a tailored engagement project that's impactful, then obviously people like myself in the divisions and departments are all there and able to help. There are internal funding schemes, as Rachel's pointed to, quite a few of them that will be relevant. And you can also request funds as part of your research grants for postdocs out there. So lots and lots of things to do. I think essentially this link here, which hopefully will be shared, posted for you all, is the place to go. It will lead you in whatever way will be helpful. So whether it's training, you know, we've got online training that you can do in your own time, as well as more in-depth training courses, whether you're looking for those opportunities or funding, whatever, that is the link that you need, and it will point you in many different directions. So yeah, I'll just finish off by saying that, you know, public and community engagement is and can be a really essential part of research. Hopefully you'll embrace it. It'll help you develop really important skills for your career inside or outside of academia, and ultimately, you know, help make research better and benefit society, hopefully. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to take any questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Michaela. That was a really helpful overview, and very inspiring too. And yes, I just was reflecting on your mentioning of transferable skills in terms of what one can learn, demonstrate, enhance, etc. And I think I just wanted to add that the Careers Service is here to help people translate that experience into good lines on the CV and good, you know, representing it well, whether that's in an academic CV or a more skills-based CV for roles beyond academia. So if that's the bit that people are worried about or wondering about, then there's plenty of support for that too. Super. We're going to move on with our lightning talks, and anyone who has further questions for Michaela, pop them in the chat line and we'll deal with those a bit later. Emma, warm welcome to you. Please tell us a bit about the Brilliant Club. We're eager to hear.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Yeah, I mean, Michaela's already talked a little bit about public engagement, so I won't talk too much about that, but next slide, please, Chris. Thanks. So yeah, I'm Emma, and I'm the Recruitment and Retention Officer at the Brilliant Club, and I work with our tutors to kind of get them involved, and then also to make sure they're receiving the training and support to continue working with us as well. So next slide, please, Chris. So the Brilliant Club is a university access charity, and we work across the UK supporting less advantaged students to access the most competitive universities and to succeed when they get there. And our biggest programme, the programme I'm going to be talking to you about today, is called the Scholars Programme. And the reason that this is such an exciting programme is because it gives researchers like yourselves the space to reflect on your subject expertise and to design a mini module based on your PhD or postdoctoral project. And this introduces our school pupils that you would be working with to topics that extend or are completely outside of their normal curriculum, and it gives them an insight into the variety of subjects that they could pursue at university. So our courses do cover a large range of subjects across arts and humanities, social sciences, STEM, and you can see a selection of them here. And so these programs that are on the slide are delivered to pupils who are in Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5. And for those of you who are interested in public engagement and research communications, but perhaps don't quite feel ready to turn your research into a course, or perhaps you're interested in teaching younger pupils, we do also have a selection of pre-designed courses that you can deliver to pupils aged 8 to 13. So in designing your course or in delivering your programme, whether that's if that's pre-designed as well, you would receive tailored support and feedback from the Brilliant Club on how to turn your research into a short course. And this is a great opportunity. As I say, it gives you a teaching experience, but also that opportunity to create a module of your own, design an assessment, and also mark those mark that work as well. Next slide, please, Chris. And I think, so as well as that opportunity of designing your own course, of getting involved with teaching and pedagogy, I think it's really important to highlight that the programmes we offer do work in supporting pupils. So as I mentioned, our aim is to get them to support pupils to access the most competitive universities, but then also to succeed when they get there. And you can see here that Year 12 students who complete the Scholars Programme are statistically significantly more likely to apply and progress to a competitive university than students from similar backgrounds. And this is based on an evaluation which is done by UCAS to measure the impact of the Scholars Programme. So we track the university applications of students who took part in the Scholars Programme, and we match them to a group that are matched on a number of key variables, including ethnicity, postcode, and GCSE attainment. And so you can see here that those pupils who took part in the Scholars Programme, 82% applied to a competitive university compared to 63% of the match control group, and then 56% of those progressed to a competitive university compared to 37% of the match control group. So the programme that we are offering, which encompasses a wide range of things, university trips, the programme, the opportunity to graduate, is really, it does really work, and it gets pupils to where we want them to be. So just moving on to the next slide, please, Chris. So I've talked about the opportunity to get involved by creating your own course, and the opportunity to make a difference. But there are also some transferable skills that we think are really key, and will hopefully support you. So teaching and pedagogy, it'll give you an opportunity to know how to design assessments, check for learning, manage a classroom, and all of that goes hand in hand with teaching and pedagogy. Communication and public engagement, so you will learn how to explain the what and the why of your research to non-specialist audiences. And you can actually see from that quote there from Sarah, who said that she feels that looking at it from her research from an outsider's perspective has made her feel that she's more employable now, because she can talk about her research much more clearly and feels more confidently with that about that. And then finally, also fair access, can't speak now, fair access, so understanding the fair access challenge in the UK. And so you'll have a greater understanding of higher education and the barriers faced by disadvantaged groups in accessing university. And as I say, all of our tutors do feel that these skills are really helpful for them in their career going forwards, whether it is that they decide to stay in academia or not. And there's lots of opportunities for our tutors to get involved with training and PD opportunities that will help them going forward with their career. If you do have any further questions, because this is a lightning talk and I realise I've spoken quite quickly, I'm going to ask Chris to put the email address into the chat, the Q&A function. So if you have any specific questions, please do send them onto us. I'm aware I haven't spoken specifically about kind of what the programme looks like, so you might have questions about that. So yeah, hopefully that's given you a very quick overview, but if you do have any more questions, I'd love to hear them.
Brilliant, Emma, brilliant from the Brilliant Club. Thank you. That's very, very inspiring. You're clearly making a difference, and in all counts, you know, for the end users of some of these fantastic resources, and also for people who are joining to construct them and deliver them. That's really, really great. So super. We're going to move straight on. I don't see any specific questions now, so let's move on. This is simply for me to say that the Oxford Policy Engagement Network is a fantastic resource. It sits in social sciences and it is available to everybody across the university. So top tip, go and see what's on offer there. There are open fellowships, open leader roles, there's training, there's all sorts of case studies and examples about policy engagement across the university. So it's a rather, sometimes at Oxford it's difficult to find things, and this is one of those things that's a treasure, a gem to go and explore. And your divisions have an enormous amount on offer. Don't forget that. Just check in with what's available under each researcher development programme. And top tip is that many divisions offer things not only for their constituents, but for everybody across the university. So it's one of those assumptions that I just need to find what's locally available to me for me, but actually there are rich resources across the university. Let's move on. And for our fixed term researcher community, the trail map has been designed with researchers across the university to help you plan your career alongside your research and to look after yourself. So there's the link to it. It's not prescriptive, it's suggestive, and it's just a way of checking in to make sure you're accessing or you know about some key supports and resources across the piece. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.